Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Rachel and this week I am sharing a what's for dinner video with you. To start off, we're making lasagna. Today I'll be using a pound of ground beef, a pound of Italian sausage, a pack of provolone sliced cheese. This will be the middle layer. I do not use ricotta or cottage cheese. I'll be using some shredded mozzarella cheese, a jar of Prego, some minced garlic, a little bit of hot crushed red pepper, a little bit of brown sugar. And that is because this particular brand of Italian sausage is very savory and not very sweet. So I just wanted to add a little bit of something to that. And then I have 6 lasagna noodles on hand. I would prefer 8, but we're using what we have. And then I broke my casserole dish, so I'll be using one of these tin pans. To start off, we're going to cook the ground beef and the Italian sausage together. I'm just going to be cooking up this meat and seasoning it really good, but I won't be draining it and I won't be adding sauce to it. Years and years ago, I watched a video of a woman making authentic lasagna, and of course she made her own sauce and used all fresh ingredients. But I, of course, am using a jarred sauce and taking a few shortcuts. But this has been the way that I always make my lasagna since then, and it's my favorite recipe. So now that the meat is all cooked up, I'm going to add some brown sugar. I don't normally add this to my lasagna or any other recipe, but since the Italian sausage, like I said, was so savory and robust in flavor, I wanted something to counteract that. I'm also adding a little bit of minced garlic and just a little bit of crushed red pepper, not a lot. I don't want this to be spicy, but I just want that brown sugar and sweet pepper taste in my meat. I did add some pepper and salt as well, and I'm just going to mix that all in and then let that cook for a while so that those flavors get a chance to mesh together. So next I'm putting my lasagna noodles into some hot boiling water. Like I said, I would prefer just a couple more lasagna noodles, but it's gonna turn out fine, I promise. And now that it's time to start layering the lasagna, I'm going to start by putting some of the sauce in the bottom of the pan. And then I add some meat. I'm using a slotted spoon so that I'm not getting a lot of that, the grease from the meat. We don't want that. So because I didn't mix the meat and the sauce together, I just want them to be touching when they're in the pan. Then I'm putting some Parmesan cheese in there just for another flavor. My noodles are softening up. They will not be fully cooked when I add them to this lasagna. They will finish cooking in the oven. Well, I lost some footage of the putting the lasagna noodles in, but just so you know, there's the first layer on top of that Parmesan cheese, then another layer of sauce, and then another layer of meat, and now I'm putting some mozzarella cheese on top of that meat. And then I'm going to put the middle layer of provolone slices. This is the ooey gooey part of the lasagna, which is my favorite. I do love cheese, and I love that this lasagna has so much cheese. I'm going to put some more sauce. You don't need to really add a ton of sauce to this. It's all going to kind of cook down and seep into each other. So then I'm putting another layer of lasagna, and I know it looks a little sparse, but it does turn out just fine. A little more sauce because we do want that liquid for the cooking process of those noodles. And so the remainder of the meat is next. And I'm using my slotted spoon and I'm angling the pan so that the uh, grease drains to the edge. And then this is the fun part for me, just putting the rest of that cheese on top. This will be the part that browns up and makes a little bit of a crust on top of the lasagna, which is always the favorite part of lasagna for everybody in our house. So on top of that, I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit of Italian seasoning and more Parmesan cheese. And then it's going to be ready to go into the oven. And so I believe on this day I put it in the oven for about 35 minutes on 375. And this was the end result. I just made some Brussels sprouts and some frozen bread, and it was a hit. The next night I had to work late and the husband was home, so he made dinner. It's always nice when you come home from work and dinner's ready for you. Every once in a blue moon, I'm in the mood for alfredo. It's not very often, it's not one of my favorite meals, but on this day, I decided I was going to make some shrimp for the husband and make some chicken alfredo for everyone else. And so I just started off by putting some Cajun seasoning on his shrimp, and I'm just rubbing it in, and I'm going to let that sit until I'm ready to throw them in a pan and heat them up. I start by putting some olive oil into a skillet and I get the chicken cut up. Once I get the chicken all cut up into bite-sized pieces, I add it to the oil, and then I'm going to add a tablespoon of minced garlic. Okay, maybe two. Some pepper. And some salt. I also added some onion powder. I am using chicken breast, and in my opinion, they need a lot of seasoning. They don't have a lot of flavor on their own. After the chicken is cooked all the way through, I remove it from the pan and I leave the juices in the pan. I'm going to use this to make the sauce, and I want all of that flavor from the chicken and the seasonings left in the pan. I am pretty much winging this fettuccine alfredo recipe. I did not have all the ingredients to make it, and like I said, I very rarely ever make this. I'm not a big fan of alfredo. I never order it when we go out to eat, and I only make it about once every 1 or 2 years. So I put some flour in the pan and I mix that in. And so my big idea here was that I would use some cream cheese. I did leave it sitting out to come to room temperature, but I probably should have microwaved it a little to get it started. It did take a long time to melt down. I added about 3 tablespoons of butter because I wanted this to have a creamy texture. And I was working with milk and not heavy cream or half and half. So I added 2 cups of milk, and then I'm adding some shredded Parmesan cheese also. I do end up using the whole bag, so about 2 cups, I believe, is in a bag. And so I'm just mixing that all together until it becomes thick, and I'm adding some black pepper to that. I am a big fan of black pepper, so I wanted a lot of that in my Alfredo sauce. And so I'm boiling the water for the fettuccine noodles. Then once the sauce looked like it was getting thicker, I added the chicken back to it. And at this point, all I'm doing is just letting it cook until that cheese melts down and the sauce thickens up. And it did turn out good. I was pretty proud of making this Alfredo sauce and not having a recipe to follow. So last, all I did was add the shrimp to some butter in a small pan and heated them up. They're already pre-cooked, and this is what my plate ended up looking like. I just had some peas on the side. And then this is the husband's plate. He's the only one that likes shrimp, so those are all his. I've often seen people make sausage balls using Bisquick, but I never seem to ever have any Bisquick on hand. But recently I saw Kristen Stepp make sausage balls using the Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuit mix, and so I thought I would give that a try. And I also was thinking in my mind, like, how would it turn out if I just made it in a loaf pan or in a casserole dish instead of making them into balls? And so I thought, hey, I'm gonna give it a try. And so on this day, I just mixed my sausage, my cheese, the package of Cheddar Bay biscuit mix, and the water that it called for on the box mix, and then the seasoning packet, and just mixed it all up with my hand mixer until all of the ingredients were uh, incorporated and mixed together. This was a very easy recipe, and everybody in my house really enjoyed it. So, what I did was I made sausage gravy to go with this. So, it was kind of a different spin on biscuits and gravy. And biscuits and gravy is one of the most loved meals in our house. I can never go wrong making biscuits and gravy for my guys. So once I had it all mixed together, I put it in a sprayed um, 9 by 13 dish. It was maybe a little bit too big for the amount that I had, but it worked out fine. It was just a thinner layer. So obviously, if you decide to make this and you want it to be taller or thicker biscuit dough, just use a smaller pan. So I just spread that out as evenly as I could. It doesn't have to be beautiful. I just popped this in the oven at 350, and honestly, I don't know how long for. I am terrible at setting timers or following instructions on a box. I just took it out when it looked like it was brown and done, and then I used a fork to poke around and see if the middle was done. And this was the end result, and it was really, really delicious. I know I'm going to be asked to make this again. So next I'm going to show you how I make sausage gravy. It is really one of the most easiest and fastest things to make. We often turn to this for dinner when we are out of time and out of ideas and just want something fast. So I browned up the sausage, and then I'm just adding some flour to that. I'm going to mix it in and make sure that all the meat is coated and give it a chance for that flour taste to cook out. It doesn't take very long, but you do want to give it some time so that it cooks down and you're not just tasting flour in your gravy. So next I just poured some milk. I don't measure any of this. I just always make it a rule to make sure that all of the sausage is covered, just covered. And then I give it some time to come to a boil and get thick and bubbly, making sure to stir it often. I hit it with some black pepper. We just really like that. And that is all there is to it. And this was our Cheddar Bay sausage biscuit creation, and it was really good. It was a hit. Ending out our week of What's for Dinners, we just had some sandwiches from Schlotzsky's. Thank you so much for coming by and watching our video. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more of what we put on our family's table each week.